Welcome to another episode of Living with FASD, Candid Conversations with Patti Kasper. This podcast is for those who are living with the effects of prenatal exposure to alcohol, their loved ones, and anyone else wanting to learn more about fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. Each week, you'll hear from someone whose expertise is either professional or living experience with FASD. I'm your host, Patti Kasper, bringing you both. Now let's get started with another candid conversation. Welcome back to another episode of Living with FASD. Today's special guest, very special guest, is not a stranger to the podcast. Welcome back, Antonia. How are you today?
Thank you, Patti. Thanks for having me back here.
Yeah, I am so excited to have you today to talk about, at long last, parenting your porcupine. For the audience who may not have heard us at the beginning of season 3, when we had all 4 of us FASD meliorists on talking about our various projects, Antonia and I are 2 of, at this point, only 4 members of a small group that we call ourselves the FASD meliorists. A meliorist being someone who believes they are making a positive impact in the world through their work. And all 4 of us are thinking in terms of legacy work. I'm the baby of the bunch and I'm in my 60s. Everyone else has had a much longer career, been in the FASD world longer than I have. And I'm just so humbled and honored to be part of this group, and especially today, to really announce and celebrate the impending birth of this wonderful book called Parenting Your Porcupine. So, Antonia, why don't you talk a little bit about your book? Maybe the full title would be nice, and how long you've been working on it, and what led you to write this, because you've dedicated a good chunk of your career to putting this together.
Thank you, Patti. Well, you may be the youngest member of our bunch, but I'll tell you what, you bring 2 hats. You bring your professional hat and lived experience hat. The living with both aspect is part of what makes your input into the team and into the books that we write so incredibly valuable to the rest of us, I have to say, because so often that perception is the professionals are over here, the people with living experience are over there, and this population is talking about that population in a way that is subject object.
Yes.
And I ran into that in writing this book. The book is about the lessons learned in my long career. I've been around, Deb Evenson and I have both been around since the early days.
Yeah, Deb Evenson being another one of our meliorist team.
Yeah. And we've been around. We met early on when the first research was being discussed in conferences and being shared with the public. But we were part of a team of people who were involved in not just identifying, but more, once you've identified, what do you do with it?
Yeah.
In terms of
now what question that I ask the readers in Sip by Sip.
Exactly. Now what?
Now you recognize this, now what?
Now we were the now what people.
Yeah.
And so for the last 30 years, I worked on the now whats about working with children.
I think we have coined a new phrase.
The now whats. The title of the book is Parenting Your Porcupine, Tools for Working with Children with FASD, Drug Effects, and Other Neurodiversity. And
maybe we could shorten that. Parenting Your Porcupine, the now whats.
The now whats. it's sort of like that, but I'll tell you, I wrote, it's an interesting problem to write with two hats on, to write as a person with experience of living with people who have this condition and working as a professional in the field as well. Because again, those things are usually separated somehow.
Yeah. And
For
you have that
example,
dual role of parenting and professional.
and professional.
Mm-hmm.
So I ran into a problem early on, and that was that as a professional, there was a lot of neurology that I needed to learn to understand the reflex system. The reason we're talking about porcupines for people who weren't part of our earlier discussions in season 3 is the analogy came from the artwork of a child who drew his experience of sensory dysregulation like a little mouse with bristly hair, and it was a porcupine. His sensory system would flare at things that other people could take in stride. And when it flared, when he got a bristle attack, he couldn't calm himself down. He couldn't force things to work. His words wouldn't work. His body didn't respond to his efforts to regroup. He couldn't regroup quickly.
Yeah. And yet it's always so surprising to parents, spouses, coworkers, whatever. Once we get triggered and have that, blah, just saying, oh, calm down. Oh, it's nothing.
And
That's totally ineffective.
And it even makes things worse.
Yeah.
Because for a person in distress, there's nothing more noxious than people piling more upon them at that moment. When they're in overwhelm, they're just in the waterfall of stimulation. They're completely at threshold.
I like that word picture too, a waterfall stimulation, because that is oftentimes how it feels. I remember touring Niagara Falls and taking the elevator down to the caverns below and seeing the force of the water. It's a beautiful word picture, Antonia. I absolutely love that. And there's also that element of don't minimize my experiences with your judgment.
There's that. And don't ask more of me when I'm in that situation and my whole body is not working the way I want it to. Don't expect more of me because I can't. And it's that concept, what the book discusses is it discusses diathesis stress concept, which is when there's a vulnerability in the body, things work a little differently. What we have to do is work with that system that's more vulnerable and understand stress load. So we call it a different body culture.
Yeah.
Living in a different body culture. And the book unfolds discussing these themes, both from the angle of what professionals would discover in terms of what symptoms are there, in terms of reflexes and neurological differences. And it discusses it from the experience of parents raising a child and seeing a child have various moments in which the brain kind of their body system is overwhelmed, their brain is on overload, their body and stress threshold is on overload, and they're experiencing a can't, not a won't.
Yeah.
In terms of their functioning, doing whatever daily tasks. But in 30 years of working with these differences, what I found was that science was describing it in a certain language. And what families needed was they needed things described in a way that they could see the differences in the brain and begin to think, okay, this is involuntary. The child is not choosing this. My child isn't choosing this. They're stuck, not not being
Not willful.
being willfully bad. They're not trying to mess up. They're not trying to have things come apart. They're not trying to have someone hurt or themselves hurt or to have a mess.
Yeah.
You know, and so the book is that discussion of things that are neurological and what it looks like on the outside and what it feels like on the inside for children, based on the things that they taught me about their experience.
Yeah.
And what the families taught me. They were adoptive families, kinship care families, biological families in recovery, all different kinds of
and all
scenarios.
different cultures.
All different cultures.
Right?
All different cultures. I worked in a variety of different cultures. I was really, really fortunate to be able to learn from everyone that I met involved with this condition over time. And it took me a long time to write it because it's very important to me that parents and professionals find a way to hear each other more clearly.
Yeah.
And every time I tried to bring the concept to an editor or to discuss what I was trying to do in the book, people would say, well, which audience are you writing to, a professional audience or the parent audience? As if they had to be separate. And my experience was, when I would be asked to come and provide trainings all across North America and different parts of the world, that the most valuable solutions emerged when families and professionals would be in the same workshop together and be hearing from each other's point of view.
Yeah. Facets, where I got my initial training in the neurobehavioral model, they had that same takeaway from all their initial work, was that the most productive training sessions occurred when it was both family members and professionals in the same space. Something about being able to hear one another's perspective in a non-threatening manner, right? Because when you're taking information in as an audience, whether it's visual and audio, like in a seminar or workshop or podcast, whether it's through reading material that's available, there's something about being on that equal plane.
Yes.
Being
on that equal plane is everything. And that's how we need to hear the kids too.
Yes.
That's the thing, is that really, because I was an art therapist, what I got to do was I got to watch and see the kids' visual voice convey things to me that they couldn't put into words. The words would come later. And so the experience of what they were going through came across so loud and clear in the art, in a way that it didn't until afterwards we would help them find the words to unpack what was going on. But that was such a valuable thing. And unless I trusted that they could show me what was happening, I wouldn't get to know, because they couldn't tell me.
Yeah.
They could show me, but they couldn't say.
I think that comes from, I remember reading in your book. Yes, I read her book early. The privilege of being part of the review team with one another, right? Getting all of our works ready for launching. I remember reading that, as an art therapist, you have them do these projects which are entirely self-directed. You throw out a broad topic that they can do anything with, and then you interview the art instead of talking with the person who did it and passing judgment on what they expressed or how they expressed it. You interview the art.
We interview the art and notice what it shows us.
Yeah.
where things are close together, far apart, size differences,
Mm-hmm.
direction of lines or shapes. There's so much that is expressed by the body when it comes directly through the hands and eyes that you can find words later, but there's something profound about that communication.
Mm-hmm.
And once we begin to decode what's going on, by seeing with gentle eyes, accepting eyes, wondering eyes, not judging eyes, we begin to see, then suddenly their experience comes out in 3D, and a person can feel heard and seen and witnessed, which changes their relationship to their sense of self. And that's a profound thing, to have a sense of, oh, so this is me, this is how me works. And so when you understand this is how me works, oh, there's some relief, because human beings, especially developing little kids, we all need two things. We need attachment, and we need authenticity. People shouldn't have to choose one or the other. That's developmentally untenable, as Gabor Mate points out. And so the book, the reviewers, what I wanted from reviewers is to know if the book is able to reach their experience of what it's like for them to be working with and raising a child, and also in dialogue with a host of other people who use different terminology, who are their helper team. What I wanted to do was have a way to bring those very invested parties together.
So you do have a wide variety of people previewing your book currently before your book is released officially.
It's crucial.
So, yeah. And I know a couple of the people that have reviewed it at this point. One is, like me, an adult living with it. One is a program director. One has been in the educational space, higher education. And it's no surprise that their feedback so far has been, this is great for the people that who are in their circle, right? Like the educator with like, this is going to be a college textbook. Forget families. This is for people who are going to be professionals, right? And yes, I second that, because that was one of the first things I said to you as I started chewing your book, was that if I ever get to the place where I can teach on a college level, this will be my textbook. And I still mean that. George, quiet. I made the mistake of letting him be in here with me because he can't see out the window and go crazy.
George.
Come here. Since the audience hears you.
There we go. And there we go. There we go, George. Yeah. There we go, George.
Yeah. He needs a haircut.
He's lovely. He looks like a little lamb. Kind of looks like a big lamb.
He's lucky he's so cute.
He is cute. Painfully cute.
Oh, this morning, his bark goes straight to my brain. It pierces my eardrums and goes straight. It's like a lightning bolt to the brain.
Wow, that's a picture, isn't it? You know what though? That trait, hyperacusis, having sensitivity to sound. Wow, is that a feature in the lives of the people that I have known and the people that I've worked with? And it's so tiring. It's so fatiguing to have sensitivity to noise like that. But it's not the kind of thing, I mean, in terms of this, the two, the audience is the professional audience, the parent audience, and the kids. Kids don't come. It's like a kid who has asthma, for example, until they know it's asthma, having wheezing is that's just how their body works. They don't know that's called wheezing. They don't know it can feel different until you give them an inhaler and you teach them how to use it and things like that. And it's the same way with neurological traits like hyperacusis or photophobia, the oversensitivity to light, and all these other sensory nuances that are part of how the body metabolizes a physical environment.
Yeah. That's something that changes over time.
It changes.
Like one of the things, I don't think I addressed it in Sit by Sit, but I have addressed it in some of the trainings that I've done since finishing Sit by Sit, is that, in the book, I talk about it being a 3-dimensional spectrum, not a linear spectrum.
Which is so good. That's such a valuable concept.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know what? I do bring it up in the book briefly. But I really think, oh, thank you, George. I really think it is a 4-dimensional spectrum, with the 4th dimension being time, because our symptoms can change over time.
Yes, definitely.
And my hyperacusis is one of those things. I mean, because like most teenagers and kids in their 20s, I had my car stereo real loud. I enjoyed my loud music with the sunroof open and the wind, and absolutely loved it. Going to a discotheque, and just using that word shows my age, right? Absolutely loved it. But now, my husband's worked around loud equipment all his
heavy equipment
life. Yep. So when he's in the vehicle, the volume is much louder than I'm comfortable with, and at times it feels as though I am being assaulted, and I literally try and disappear into the seat. I find myself pressing back into the, just as if I'm being assaulted, and it's
the physical body
sensitivity that changes over time.
When we talk about a stress load and a stressor, that example you're giving is a perfect example. It's as if my body tries to pull back into the seat. Those are all reflexive adaptations that the body is doing without asking the frontal lobe
for permission.
Should we do this? Yeah. Should we do this? What do you think? Our plan.
Yeah.
It's autonomic. So it's happening at the reflex level. And it's a set of held tensions that a person bears up with and bears up with and bears up with as time goes on. It's tiring and can be painful, actually physically painful, and lead to all kinds of additional stress load. So that understanding that this is a physiological condition, a whole body condition, and that people don't have a language for it until they learn certain new ways of expressing to another person, this is what's happening. This is what's happening in my body. They can begin to get their body culture across to someone else. And then for parents, they can begin to say, so here's how I have to interact with them, because this is how this works for them. It's not how it works for me, but this is how it works for this little one.
And then being able to use that language and advocating for them with teachers, school officials, or as an adult living with it, being able to advocate for yourself at work. Asking for the accommodations that you need.
In living situations.
Nothing wrong with that.
In living situations with other people, anytime we're up next to other people, we do run into the issue of how they're used to doing things and how we're used to doing things.
Right.
And
that's it exactly. That's it exactly, because we all, part of human nature is having that internal frame of reference.
It is.
Having that belief that I'm just like everybody else, and therefore they're just like me, and they experience the world the way I do. They think the way I do. They've been taught the same way that I've been taught about how things are supposed to be done. And it's just not the case.
There could be this mismatch or this clash between what's happening for one person, what's happening for the other. And so the book really is my effort to give tools from all different angles on what to do with those mismatches. Because in families, that mismatch over time can become a cycle of miscues in which people are experiencing the difficulty of body culture and have no tools around it, and therefore are unable to shift expectations, are unable to navigate those stuck places, experience a lot of pain and frustration and stress, and eventually they begin to interpret things in a very disappointing way. They begin to feel completely disappointed, like maybe as families they're failing, or looking at their child as if their child is failing, or looking at the professional as if the professional would just do their job right, then this wouldn't be so hard on my child. Somehow getting a way to resolve the cycle of miscues and go back to the fact that when we live in a different body culture, we can have good days and bad days.
Yeah.
And the good days, bad days concept is a very central idea to how people live with a physical difference over time. It's natural that we have days where things work a little better for us, and environments in which things work a little better for us, and other places in which that's really, really over our stress threshold, and we really need workarounds to be able to navigate those situations.
Yeah.
So the book talks about an awful lot of those scenarios and what the workarounds look like, what the how-tos, and now what's are.
And I think, do I need to pick you up again? I think one of the beauties of your parenting your porcupine is because it speaks to multiple audiences, it facilitates that communication between team members. It teaches
That's the hope.
How the professionals look at things. And it really reminds the professionals that book knowledge is not the same thing as practical adaptive knowledge.
There's some presets that professionals come in to practice with that don't apply to families living with a chronic condition.
Yeah.
And I try and flesh out those barriers that are endemic to being in the culture of being a professional.
Yeah.
Because some of those fundamental beliefs they're not a good fit with these families or with these kids and adults who are living with a chronic condition. It's a chronic medical condition that looks like just a psychological or an emotional issue or things like that, but it's not.
There's so much to unpack just in the past 2 minutes worth of conversation, Antonia. Living with chronic illness or chronic conditions is exhausting for all parties. I know, like with the diabetes, we make like hundreds of decisions more per day than non-diabetics.
Oh, absolutely.
Just to stay alive.
Just to stay alive.
But in terms of living with a neurobehavioral or neurodevelopmental condition like FASD, where our differences are not seen and are frequently forgotten by the people that we are surrounded by, there's that constant misunderstanding being blamed, shamed, and punished, that creates a lot of anxiety, that creates a lot of depression, that creates a lot of anger and frustration and resentment.
Yes.
And so those things play into using a psychological model in therapy, right? Where, and I think this is what I keep coming back to, at least in PYP,
Yep.
that we will continue to be malserved.
Yes. Yes.
Poorly served by
Yes.
the professional community,
Yes.
so long as they are looking at this with a prescription that says psychological issues,
Yeah.
because they're
Yeah.
neurological.
They're neurological issues.
They're not psychological. It's not choice. It's not will. There can be no
It's not
motivational
software.
strategy that is
It's not
going to
software, it's hard.
undo the neurological changes that occurred before we were born. It's just not going to happen.
It's you can fiddle with the software all you want, but the hardware has certain configurations, and unless we respect that and we understand it, we can't even begin to gently know which software we might try with the help of the person to, to or which other components we might try and bring in.
Yeah.
Because of a hardware glitch.
Much like going back to another diabetic analogy.
They're really apt. Those are
Our technology is like night and day compared to, like, my service dog is retired because the technology is such that she's not needed anymore.
And there we go.
Even with the
but having a
technology,
dog was technology.
yeah,
For
I
your
paid
condition.
$20,000 for the technology of a lab's nose.
Yep.
And it was well worth it because she has saved my life 54 times.
Yeah, exactly.
Despite the fact that I was using the most advanced technology at the time.
At the time.
But no matter how advanced we get with the approach, that the scientific approaches that we use,
yep,
being able to mimic the way God designed our bodies to work in the first place, it's never going to happen. We're never going to get there to that level.
The point you make there about this being a moving target developmentally is so important, because as the reviews are coming in, part of what these wonderful reviewers, I am so blessed to have these. I'm the luckiest woman in the world to have all of these reviewers speak honestly from their wisdom and tell me this book is hard in some places. I love it. Sometimes I read it and I feel it's like this really works for me. This fits. Mm-hmm. Gosh, it's a relief to see this. They tell me both. They tell me things like that because the book is, as you were saying to me previously, it's not a one and done kind of read. Yeah. The book is meant to be one of those books that you have that it's sort of a big buffet. You can take what you need over here. Oh, that looks too chewy and crunchy, and I don't want to chew on forever right now. I'm going to put it on the shelf and leave it for a while. You can come back to it later on, and you can come back to it after you've tried some of the concepts and put some of the practices to the test and see what fits or doesn't fit in your situation, in your home environment or your professional environment. Mm-hmm. And then you can come back to the book and you can read around in another section and graze from that. So you can kind of graze as you need to. And some of it is kind of chewy stuff. It's not easy to read medical terms.
And yet, I found gems on every single page.
Oh, well, That means a lot to me. And that's why it took me so long. I'm not a writer by trade. I'm not. I'm a therapist. I'm an artist. I use visual language. I'm a painter.
You paint
And
word pictures
to
beautifully.
try and get from the science, the terminology of science,
Mhm.
to the metaphors of lived experience has taken me, it's taken me a long time to see if I could do that. And I couldn't do it without the help of other people. I didn't have the skill, and I didn't have the I had the passion to do it, but not the technical experience and skill to do it. And I really needed the help of our team to be able to understand how to unfold the ideas, because they all relate to one another in a circle. It's like one of those knowledge wheels where this part relates to that part, relates to that part.
Yes.
But books are read sequentially.
Yeah.
So we can't wheel them around very easily and hop from chapter to chapter. Well, I tried to make it so that people could have the section of terminology and then hop through the different chapters to see how it applies at home, how it applies in the interaction with a child, how it applies in a counseling session with families. I tried to make it be able where you can be
Yeah.
able to spin it around that way
And I
and
think,
chew on pieces as you go. But
yeah, I
it's
think
thick.
that's one of the beautiful contributions from our friend Jody
Yes,
Cole, in that she said, this book needs an index.
she's right.
So
And
that
it would
way
never occurred to me.
you can take hold of that one thread at
That's
one
right.
place in the tapestry, see
That
where
one
else.
word, that term, or whatever it is, and go, wait a minute, what is that again? Alexithymia, what is that again? Oh, that's when speech uncouples and the body state is activated, but there's no words.
Yeah, yeah,
And then you resolve it like that,
right.
or like this. Things like that.
Yeah.
Having a way to put observations out there
Mm-hmm.
for all different people, families, professionals, either, everyone, to be able to look and say, oh, wait, looks and walks and talks like that.
Yeah.
And inside, this is what's going on. Oh,
Yeah.
well,
And
that's
I
why
think that
I did
that
it.
kind of dovetails back into the point I was starting to make but did not finish, um, with the diabetes. I hate to bring this up yet again. Sorry,
No, but
folks,
it
but
works because it's a physiological reality.
yeah. So, people think that, people have known about diabetes for longer than they've known about FASD. And it also is very complicated. However, it's people living with it rarely have the textbook presentation.
No kidding.
Right?
People know the
We're
word,
supposed to
but they don't
respond.
know what it is.
We're supposed to respond like the textbook teaches in medical school or nursing school, and you do things X, Y, and Z. And it's a very simplistic understanding that they have where blood sugar is like a plane that balances on this pyramid with the factors you can quantify, such as insulin, number of carbohydrates, number of calories burned in an activity. And if you know those three things, then you can keep something in perfect balance. Well, having lived with this for 60 years, I say to that, bullshit.
Yeah.
Pardon my French, but there's 48 factors that affect blood sugar levels because of metabolism
Yeah.
of not only food, but also your metabolism of the insulin and everything else.
Exercise,
And
movement, sleep.
we can only quantify 3 of 48 factors, which is why we will never respond in textbook fashion.
And
And
there,
we need to take that as an example for all the practitioners out there who think they know about FASD because they paid attention in their 30-minute lecture.
right. Oh, it always has facial features like this.
Yeah, yeah. And 10%
Oh,
of people until
you
puberty.
can't have a fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. You don't have the physical face of FA, no.
Yeah.
All of those things. But that's the thing. As you're saying, the lived experience of a condition gives a person a host of information that they need to get across to the supposed helper.
Which is something you call time span data.
I call it time span data.
Time span data. Teachers have a lot of time span data, and family has the time span data. Doctors, nurses, therapists, psychiatrists, social workers, they don't have it.
If we know how to interview them, it's hard to get it.
Yeah.
But in the art, we can get it.
Yeah.
We can get at it.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And when we have it, that's the big thing your example really highlights from diabetes is once we get at past what the label is, the experience of living with, how does that work? What are our go-tos? What are our swaps? We can't stop this. Can we swap to something that'll work a little differently or work a little better? These concepts make an enormous difference in a family's resilience over time.
Absolutely.
And even in a professional's resilience, in the 30 years, Deb and I were talking about this. In the 30 years, we've seen a lot of professionals come and go. We've seen a lot of people blast onto the stage and make a great presentation and whatever else, and then they're gone. It's like, where did that one go? Where did that one go? And over time,
and why did they burn out so quickly?
Yes, burnout is a reality, and people can recover from burnout. People can get through it. There are strategies for that, but we talk about that in the book too, because in a professional, it looks like passing these, I don't know what, I'm out of skills with this family. I think what I better do is I better refer them to somebody else, someone that, I'm sorry, but I think I've shared everything I can with you, and I've worked with you for 6 months, and I've offered you active listening. I've offered you these other things, and I've offered you timeouts, and I've offered
chart. Don't forget the sticker chart.
And I've offered you sticker charts, and I've offered you these techniques that I know, and either you're not applying them correctly, or I don't have anything else to offer you, so I'm going to refer you to my colleague over here at this other agency, blah, 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 blah. And families are used to being passed around like
rubber stamped and kicked out.
Exactly. That's a perfect way to say it. Rubber stamped and kicked out. And they don't have, and then they start over with someone else telling them exactly the same tips and hints
that don't work.
That don't work for them.
Yeah. Because they're psychological approaches that rely on motivational strategies.
Exactly that.
If motivational strategies worked on neurological issues, telling a blind child, try harder, they'll magically be able to read.
There you go. There you go.
Not.
There you go. So really taking a physical lens to this, staying with a physical lens to this, and being able to collaborate with others in exploring what the physical lens shows us and what our observations can really reveal if we really see what we're seeing, not what we think. We've been taught to think about what causes something. That is a huge thing to overcome. And the more social memes there are, and the more pop psych terminology there is swirling around in the general culture, the worse it is, because people think they know if they can recognize something like, oh, diabetes. Oh, yeah, I remember that word. It means something about, oh, it's a blood sugar thing, isn't it? Isn't it something like that? They don't really know what it is.
There's only 3 things that your blood sugar rests on.
Yeah, they don't really know what that experience is. And so the same for FASD. People And the same for kids with drug exposures. People have all kinds of beliefs about it that don't necessarily A, help, B, aren't true, C, lead them down rabbit holes in places that aren't useful to go.
Right.
And so the book the book is my attempt to gather up 30 years of information, concepts, and how-tos. Mm-hmm. And it is nutty, it's chewy, it's it's something to chew on. But to offer that to the community working now and say, I'm old and I'm going to pass on what I know here, so that those of you who are having these experiences don't think you have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
Maybe you can start at a higher level than that.
You, my dear, don't have just a wheel to share. You have a whole tire shop.
Thank you. It was hard. It was kind of hard to write about all those tires, to get it all sorted out, and to help people who are not comfortable with rubber and burning rubber to be able to wander around in there. But listen, there's a way to organize this stuff, and what we've tried to do with your help and the others of the team, what the effort is.
Yeah.
The goal
and I think one
is
of
to make something that's a practical handbook.
Yeah.
To try and make a practical handbook for both professionals and parents to be able to work better together.
Yeah. And I think one of those keys goes back to time span.
It's a pretty core concept in this book.
It really is. Not just, giving people logs to fill out about what was the crisis, what led up to the crisis, who was there. That's just a piece of it. I really like the questions, adding to that mix is the problem that occurred, does it reflect the neurological insult, right? The way that it affected our hard drive? Or does it reflect the mismatch between the way we work, the way other people expect us to do stuff, right? Because so much of the time, it's really other people's issues, not ours. We get stuff done. We might go about it in a different way, but we get it done with the right support.
And that's the crucial role that people with lived experience are bringing into the field now, because we cannot get there without it. We cannot have solutions without hearing from people who have lived what their solutions are and are willing to say, this is how this goes.
Yeah.
Let me open my diary and give you a little window into what this is like, so that you now have a different way to look at this.
Yeah. And having that humility to say, this is what works for me. It may not work for you because you're a different person.
And as you and so many others have pointed out, when you meet one person with FASD, you've met exactly that one person. The range of the variability is enormous. So giving people a toolkit for working with a range of variability and keeping their knees bent. Marcy Tharp, a woman who I met who was raising 6 children with fetal alcohol spectrum disorders, 3 of whom were medically fragile, said, I had to learn to parent with my knees bent.
Yeah.
And I called that, she and I laughed and said, so spandex parenting, right?
Or surfboard parenting.
Because it's really, really about knowing that there's good days and bad days for a given person, and their vulnerabilities, their stress symptoms, their stress signs, when they're in dismay or in distress, when they're in stress overload. It's going to look like this. There it is. Oop. Yeah. Okay. And they're bottoming out.
And I think every parent
knowing
is
how to see that. Parents have an awful lot of information that they don't
really have.
They don't realize they have, and professionals don't interview them in a way. Professionals say things like, well, I know that you have solutions. Well, when a parent is feeling at the bitter end, exhausted and in compassion fatigue, they look at them and they say, wait a minute, I came to you for help and you're telling me I have to fix this myself. Mm-hmm. What? No, I came to you because I need something new here. I'm at the edge of my skill set.
Yeah.
And there's a delicate balance as a practitioner between dosing that respect for what they know with the fact that when they're in depletion, they don't know that they have anything left there to look for or to look with or to even begin to think about it with. They're like, I'm exhausted, okay? He's driving me crazy, or I'm at my wit's end here.
I'm too tired to fill out.
I failed. Don't you understand? I failed. When people are saying I'm in depletion, that's not the time to say to them, oh, I know how smart you really are, buck up.
Here's your homework.
It is a delicate balance to say to a medically challenged family, do more. No, what we want to do is say, what are you going through? Walk me through what your life is like. Let me feel along with you and get a sense of what's going on here. Because
clearly, like when I had my big surgery almost 9 years ago. Well, I guess it was 9 years ago. Almost 9 years ago. The doctor in Bakersfield had said, there's nobody in this town that has the skill set you need. You're going down south. You pick your hospital. Do you want UCLA, USC, or Cedars?
Or Sinai. Yeah.
I chose Cedars because they've got a really good diabetic reputation.
Yep.
And I had done the outpatient clinic at UCLA for 10 years without getting significantly better. So I figured all those doctors are the same. That's not going to, I wanted a vacation. I wanted to be able to just focus all my energy on healing.
On you instead of on
surgery that I'm about to undergo.
Instead of teaching your professionals what they didn't know to try and not mistreat you.
Right. And so the irony was they have an outstanding reputation, but all the staff members that know what they're doing with type 1 diabetes were on the medical floor, but I was on the surgical floor where they didn't know jack shit. So I didn't get my vacation.
This analogy, Patti, I mean, it's part of what makes you a brilliant trainer, is that this analogy really brings it home to people that's the position that families feel. I remember talking with some of the guys in the embracing Zach community, embrace movement, and there was an example provided of a family who had spent close to between 7 and 10 years with a play therapist. Oh. And part of I studied play therapy. I have colleagues who are excellent play therapists, but part of what I found in my techniques, and I included this in Parenting Your Porcupine, is that we need to use, for some children, we need to use a form of directive play therapy, which is not child-led, it's theme-led, and then we co-navigate with the child in a dialogue, but it's guided by thematic things that allow the child to frame the sensory overload pieces and then their response to that and their emotions about it, and then the words that they would need to use in order to get that across to somebody. It's staged so that children can take bite-sized pieces and navigate through that using play, using props, using art, using pictures, using scripts and themes,
and
but
it
it's a
sounds,
very different approach than
yeah.
non-directive play therapy, which is the state of the art that everybody insists is what, and neurotypical kids can benefit from non-directive play therapy, but the kids that I saw went in circles with that. They would perseverate and they go in circles with that. And play therapy,
there's too many options.
They used to contact me from all over the place, all over Canada, everywhere. And they'd say, I've been working with this child for a year and they're still playing the same scenarios, more or less. And I don't know how to progress with them. And it used to just kill me when I'd hear that, because in the first year that our program would work with families, kids would move and the families would move, and they'd address burnout and they'd come back together. There was a lot of movement. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't just going in circles ad nauseum, but it was partly psychoeducational and partly invitational. And it was this harmonious dialogue of going back and forth that allowed this movement to feel more productive for the families and for the kids. It made all the difference in the world. Because nobody wants to spend money. I mean, accessing services for families, it's time consuming, it's expensive, it's difficult. You have to truck your kid all over the place. I mean, it's demanding, and they're already doing all they can with kids who don't like to shift environments easily. It's completely stressful. Every time you're sticking them in a car ride and expecting them to go somewhere, you can be stressing them to the max, and without certain accommodations to tolerate being in the car for that long.
I have a friend who literally lost a significant amount of hearing due to her son's screaming in the car, because of how those transitions work or don't work so well.
Yeah.
So that's a serious thing.
It is a serious thing, because as I was going deaf, I was in my profession and I loved it. And I have a genetic vulnerability and had genetic problems with my ears as a little kid. But I was the baby whisperer at Emmanuel Hospital in a specialized project for drug-affected infants. It was a research and demonstration project. And I was the baby whisperer who would be with the kids with the neuro cry, the shrieking. And I had years of the shrieking. Yeah. And foster parents and adoptive parents and kinship caregivers have years of that shrieking. Yeah. They have years of it. And professionals who have never, ever heard that neuro cry have no idea what that does to them viscerally, vaguely, to their bodies.
It's like George's barking.
I knew.
It has that same effect on me.
I knew George's barking, the loud sound. So after a while, yes, one begins to pay a physical price. Yeah. Compassion fatigue is physical. It's not absolutely just psychological. It's physical, because one's body has been serving as a buffer for another person's sensory vulnerabilities. Yeah. And people have literally, we put our bodies there. I have a broken nose from a child with meth exposure. I have a broken finger that didn't heal correctly from another child. We put our bodies there. Yeah. And we're happy to do it. And kids are worth it.
It's not just those injuries, but the impact stress of chronic stress. Caring for my mother, one of the things that I learned
caregiving is hard
dementia circles is that 1/3 of caregivers end up passing away before their demented loved one.
There we go.
It's the effect of the chronic stress of caregiving.
There we go, Patti. There it is. And so when families say to me, I feel seen,
Mm-hmm.
or I feel heard, it means the world to me.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
the book shouldn't be about something telling them do this, do this, do this, do this, do that. No, that's not what families need. Families need a handbook that they can turn to when times are hard. And maybe it gives them a new way through it. Maybe it gives them a moment to back up and back off and go, okay, I got to pick my battles here. But there's a lot to having lived experience with this, and marrying that with what we can find of techniques that actually serve these families and people with a physiological difference. And so that was the goal of PYP, and I submit it for people's consideration to use like they would a buffet, to take a little snack of this, take a little snack of that, chew on it, see what you like, go back and graze through another part of it. It's not an easy read, but it might be a useful read.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be a valid read.
I don't think there's a might about that. It will definitely be a useful read for any professional, and well, really all professionals, because with the rates that we have when we are living with FASD, having comorbid mental health issues, we are overrepresented on caseloads. And every therapist is working with several of us without knowing it.
Absolutely. The average therapist's caseload is 60 kids in a week or more. How many of those
At
might
least
have an FASD?
50 would be my guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so having a different toolkit to be able to offer clients, and having a different toolkit as a family to be able to take to your practitioner if you're not getting anywhere and say, can you read this? Can we chew through this together? That's what we did with the original curriculum. I took it to families and we would chew it up together. And they would bring their therapist or their case manager. Sometimes we had a special evening that we provided in group for them to bring professionals that they wanted to better understand this, invited them to come to the parent support group and listen to a family panel. Things like that. We built that into our parent support groups. So there's an appendix in the back about how we used it for parent support groups in case people want to have one of those. But by golly, there was 130 years.
You and I have been working together for a little over a year now.
Yep.
And I was just inspired like a minute and a half ago to go back to the college where I got my master's degree, to approach them and say, let me teach this class.
Oh, Patti, you should do that. Because you're a good teacher.
Because thank you. Seriously, adoption expertise, adoption issues, that's not taught in grad school. Trauma probably is at this point.
Trauma is beginning to be taught, but it's not taught for kids under 10.
Yeah.
Which is why I wrote PYP to talk about all that stuff. And I go hard at that. We'll be getting some reviews back from a colleague who's an excellent specialist. She's a cultural specialist on our federal project. Mm-hmm. And I'm so looking forward to her feedback, because she's an early childhood educator with marvelous experience, just brilliant experience. Her name is Susie Kirshner. But there's so many of these wonderful people that I've been able to ask, would you do me the favor? Would you review it? And some of them were families from the original study. Some of them are people with lived experience whom I don't know. Some of them are from other parts of the world. I'm very fortunate to be able to have such a wide number of reviewers. I am so grateful.
I am so happy for you. And I know the thrill of reading their feedback, because when I had glowing feedback from Ken Jones, hello, or
Ken
Steve
Jones.
Greenspan,
Yeah.
both of
Yeah.
whom
Stephen
praised
Greenspan.
Sip by Sip.
Ken Jones, right.
I'm floating on cloud nine.
Well, you deserve that good feedback, because it is a foundational text. It's a foundational book. People need to read it. It's a beautiful book, Sip by Sip. Beautiful book.
Yeah,
It's
and
so
it's not it's not a scholarly piece, right? Like yours is, but
oh, mine's not scholarly. Mine is a really it's a real lasagna. It's layers of noodles
with the
and
flavors just
spinach.
melting together like a good lasagna does.
Well, we'll see. But no, Sip by Sip is one of those books that once you read it, you're like, wow. Oh,
Yeah.
the respect it creates, the caring it generates, and the empathy that it evokes for the experience and the tenacity
And
of
honoring the
people.
diversity.
It's kind of like Rebecca Tillou's book Tenacity. There's something so powerful when people tell their stories, because we can feel their effort and their resilience and the ways that they overcome.
Yeah. You know, in T. Warner's review of Sip by Sip, she said, I remember being a table eating lunch at one of the Seattle conference we just had. Well, when that was up in Canada, she was at one of the conferences and someone came to the table and said, we've known the facts about FASD for decades, but it's the stories that change lives. And I think that's the power that I bring to the space in allowing or facilitating 12 people with living experience to tell their stories.
Well,
Showing
the beauty of that is the stereotype from the research makes people leave conferences thinking, oh my goodness, my child is doomed. No. Yeah. And that's the beauty of the FASD change makers. Yeah. All of you speaking from your wisdom makes all this difference. This difference to the rest of us. It's so important. It's so important.
Yeah. Hey, that's just your grandma. Don't quit growling.
You got somebody there at your heels?
No, he could hear grandma walking down the hall.
Oh.
Oh.
He was
yeah.
That's the sign in ASL for.
Let me see it. Oh.
It's R.
Yeah.
It's an initial, what they call an initialized sign, okay. Meaning it's R, because there are signs that have no English alphabet initial in front of them. Yeah. Like the sign for photograph or picture, which is like a camera lens. Oh. Right? It's like a camera lens, an old-fashioned camera. Mm. Yeah, the lens that used to stick out from the camera. Yeah. So camera, but this one is an initialized sign for grr. And we make it with a.
You growl very well.
Oh, it's because
Are we off topic? Thanks, George.
Totally. But there we go. People make assumptions about deaf community all the time. They make assumptions they just make. We don't know what we know until we learn about it, and then we know differently.
And people, and again, returning to the analogy I've used earlier today about, not realizing there's only 3 out of 48 factors can be quantified.
Yeah.
leaves those of us with living experience being judged and condemned, right?
Yeah.
Negatively judged for our failure to mimic the way God created something to work before an injury or whatever caused brought about the diabetes. In
There's
my
one other,
case,
there's one other, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, in my case, I am fully convinced that it's a function of the alcohol exposure.
I think you're onto something there, because you have at other times mentioned this tremendous, there was an overlap you mentioned.
Because of the age,
You were
right?
suggesting research look into this. You had.
We need to get research teams in those two very different conditions to coordinate and work together and do a joint venture.
Well, that's one of the things that I learned from you and from your work in Sip by Sip, is you make suggestions to research. You ask questions and you make suggestions to research. And I never thought of that. So again, this is the value of working as a team and being able to have the benefit of another person's point of view and say, what about, and ask these interesting questions. And
I think that's one of the beauties that the ALC, the Adult Leadership Collaboration of the FASD Changemakers, brings to our table.
Totally.
Their seat at the table is, hello, researchers.
Hello.
Nothing about us without us.
And we're right here.
Considered this?
I'm not in prison. I'm right here.
Yeah. Have you considered this?
I'm a parent. I'm raising children or whatever. I'm an adult single man doing this work or this gift, contributing this in the world, whatever it is. Yeah.
They ask the questions. They are very analytical. They are eyes wide open, looking at their commonalities, and they're asking appropriate questions, and they're bringing those questions to research teams.
And that's absolutely essential. It's absolutely essential.
Inciting enthusiasm to the point where stuff actually gets looked at.
Well,
huge gift.
In PYP, there's a little part that I'm very, very happy that I included. And I'll go ahead and highlight that last little bit. There was a researcher at Oregon State University who discusses the bias map framework. And her work, I quoted bits and pieces of her work that discuss the actual structure of biases and how these may have affected our field. I give an example of how one client that I knew was impacted by the filters that exist in the formal community. And it is only by discovering these outlying, or what we think are outlining pieces, and gathering up and saying, no, wait, maybe that's all part of the catchment too. Maybe our lens has been too narrow. Maybe, research it can be done in many, many ways. What people are used to thinking of as research is typically quantitative research. There's a whole angle of qualitative research, which gets much less press, it gets much less acknowledgement.
But it is no less valued or valid.
It's extremely valuable and extremely valued. And two of the most impactful influences on the work that I ended up doing, and that is now being shared in PYP, came from the work of Judith Kleinfeld, who initially did qualitative research with families raising children with fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. And she wrote 2 books with co-writers about it. And the other one was the research done by Minkler and Rowe in Berkeley, California, looking at families in the Oakland, Berkeley area who were living, grandparents raising children in the era of crack cocaine during the whole concern about crack babies and all of that, which Ira Chasnoff became sort of the reigning ruler and expert of all of that. But I really found Minkler and Rowe's work to be extremely useful in helping the families that I worked with whose children had primarily drug exposures besides alcohol. Alcohol was in there, but the primary exposures had been polydrug use and sometimes exclusively meth use. So I found treatment of those kids to be a little different, and I focus on some of those stories as well, because from the qualitative lens, there was a lot that came out. There was a lot that we discovered that we couldn't see from a statistical point of view, but the thematic concepts were invaluable for families. And so, yeah. So research isn't one thing. It's actually a basket with a lot of different tools in it.
Yeah.
But families don't necessarily know that. So they also don't see themselves as having any data because they don't call it data.
Yeah. Yeah.
They call it, well, this is what I saw, or this is what he did, or, you know, this is what happened. They call it stories.
Right. And that's another aspect of your book, highlighting the need to have a common lingo so that professionals and families can talk together and understand one another and see the value in each other's, right? Because professionals have more to offer than psychobabble.
Sometimes, let's hope they do. Let's hope they do, you know? Right. I know what I know.
A lot of times that's how it comes across, you know, like the teacher in the Peanuts cartoons, wah, 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 right?
Right. You and I are old enough to remember those cartoons when it looked like mumbo jumbo up there, and there was this cloud, and the child was like, eh? You know? Yeah, there we go.
Oh,
so,
well,
when next time you talk with Stephen Greenspan and Ken Jones, I look forward to a next interview with them, because I really valued the things that they shared, and because I look at the juncture of FAS and autism in an interesting way compared to some people. I found those things rather interestingly linked in some interesting ways. Variable, but certainly interesting in terms of sensory stimulation and sensory threshold. Very interesting, shared domains there, which I'd love to be able to talk to others about. And then also with Ken Jones, the piece about stigma, what you and he talked about in terms of the stigma towards bio parents being even harder on birth moms
than
who were drinking,
the stigma
against women who were incarcerated, women who had, had all these other conditions that are horrifying to people. That one was the one that really
eye-opening.
It was very eye-opening.
Yeah. And yet, I fight against that all the time. In most of my conversations, I will bring up that we cannot blame women for using a substance that is legal prior to even suspecting that they're pregnant.
Which is
kind of unfairness.
It is. It's unfair. People do it all the time, but it's unfair. We discuss that too in Parenting Your Porcupine. So yeah, there's a lot of growth there. It's kind of rocky, isn't it?
But we have to, there's so much about life that's unfair, but you just have to play the hand that you're dealt.
Yes.
And, things are what they are, and we
Yes.
have to find the workarounds
We find our
to
workarounds.
live our best lives despite
That's it.
the
That's it.
things that we don't like so much.
That's it.
And parenting your porcupine has so many tools and so many, like I said, there's at least one gem on every single page.
Thank you, Patti. Thank you so much.
So I can't recommend your book highly enough.
Thank you so much.
And if I ever do get a position teaching on the collegiate level, I will be using it as my textbook.
You will have that position. You will.
I hope so.
You will. It's coming.
I hope so.
It's coming.
So
I can see it in the future.
Professor Kasper.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much for a wonderful conversation.
Yeah. Always enjoyable and always so filled with good fruit when the two of us sit down and talk at the mic. Thank you again for coming back on to Living with FASD, and we'll do it again. And I really like the episode we did a month ago with the four of us meliorists sitting down, and I think I'm hoping to make that a regular feature here on the podcast, where we just pick a topic and the four of us chew at it. I think that would be something good to have in season 3. So,
well, I'm up for that.
Yeah.
I'm up for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend, for blessing me and blessing my audience.
Thank you. And thanks to everybody who tuned in.
I can't wait to tell everybody when PYP is going to be released.
So. I think we're there in April, and it's going to be on Books By.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's
going to be on Books By.
I have some former foster families that I've been working with that will be buying it. So. Yeah.
Well, I'm here if you need me. So.
All right, my friend.
You know where to find me.
Yeah, I'll find you on Zoom in less than a week at our regular weekly meeting.
There we go.
You have a good week, my friend, and I'll catch
you.
You too. With you later. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Living with FASD Candid Conversations with Patti Kasper. Feel free to send comments, questions, and topics you'd like to learn more about, hear more about, to me at livingwithfasdpodcast@gmail.com. Please remember to like, follow, and share this podcast on whatever platform you use so that more people can find the podcast. Have a blessed week, everyone, and tune in next Monday for another candid conversation on Living with FASD.